You know, sometimes life whispers things you don't understand until it's too late. It tests you when you are weakest and rewards you only when you've already stopped expecting anything. Have you ever loved someone so much that you forgot how to love yourself? Have you ever worked day and night only to be told you are never enough? Maybe that's just me. Before I start, I want to thank you, my dear listener, for giving your time to an old woman like me. You could be anywhere right now, doing anything, but you are here with me, listening. It means more than I can say. If you don't mind, may I ask you something? Where are you listening from? And what time is it there, my child? Because where I am, it's late evening, the kind of evening when the world goes quiet, and only your memories speak back to you. My name is Margaret Ndlovu, and this is the story of how I lost my son, not because death took him away, but because pride did. I wasn't born rich, no. But I was born strong. Life made sure of that. After my husband died, I learned how to clean other people's mess, not just the dirt on their floors, but the dust that settles in their hearts, too. I used to say, you can tell a lot about people by how they treat the woman who cleans their house. Some people smile kindly, some look away, and some make you feel like you are invisible. I worked 3 jobs for years, cleaning offices in the morning, washing clothes at noon, and cooking for other families at night. Every coin I earned went into a small tin box hidden under my bed. That box wasn't just metal. It was my dream, my hope, my son's future. My boy's name is Elisha. Ah, my Elisha, my pride and my heartbreak all in one breath. When he was little, he used to say, "Mama, one day I will buy you a big house. You won't need to clean anymore." And I would laugh and say, "My son, the only house I want is one where love lives." But love is fragile when pride walks in. As Elisha grew older, something in him began to change. He started to notice things: my worn-out shoes, my hands cracked from washing, the way my clothes smelled of soap and iron dust. At first, he would just go quiet when his friends visited. Later, he started calling me just a cleaner. I told myself he's young, he'll understand one day. But the truth? Each word of his was a small cut on my heart. And hearts don't bleed where you can see it. They bleed inside, silently. I still remember one afternoon. He came home from college, angry, throwing his bag on the couch. "Mom, do you have to come near the campus every time I forget my lunch? I don't want people to see you there." I smiled, though my hands were shaking. "I was just bringing you food, my son." "Yeah, but you don't have to come dressed like that." He waved at my uniform, blue apron, old shoes, scarf tied tightly around my head. I wanted to tell him, "This uniform fed you, paid your fees, kept your dreams alive." But I didn't. I just nodded softly. "All right, my son, I understand." That night I worked an extra shift. Tired? Yes. But in my heart, I was saving for something beautiful. His graduation gift. When the university sent out invitations, I was the happiest woman alive. I ironed my only good dress, fixed the small tear near the sleeve, and borrowed a pair of shoes from Ruth, my neighbor and oldest friend. She looked at me and said, "You've done well, Margaret. Your son's success is your success too." And I smiled. I believed her. The morning of the graduation, the sky looked like it was celebrating too. Clear, bright, full of promise. I packed a small lunchbox for Elisha, rice, beans, and the meat he liked most, just in case he hadn't eaten. It's funny, isn't it? No matter how grown they get, you never stop packing their food. I reached the university grounds quietly. There were parents everywhere. Mothers in bright dresses, fathers in suits, everyone taking pictures, laughing. I stood at the back, near the trees, holding my small phone, waiting for that one moment. To see my boy walk the stage and wear that smile I dreamed of for years. Then I saw him. My Elisha, tall, proud, looking handsome in his graduation gown. My eyes filled with tears. Every sleepless night, every aching back, it was all worth it. I wanted to call out my son. "Look here!" But before I could, he saw me first, and his smile vanished. He froze, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. Then he looked at his friends. They were whispering, one even laughing quietly. He walked quickly toward me, his jaw tight. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you, my boy." I told you not to come dressed like this." Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone's watching. My throat closed up. I tried to speak, but no words came. Around us, people stared. Some looked away, some whispered. I felt my knees go weak. I took a small step back and said softly, "I'm sorry, my son. I didn't mean to shame you." He turned his face away, ran his hand through his hair, and muttered, "Just go home, Mom. Please." I stood there for a long time after he walked away. The cheering from the crowd sounded like echoes from another world. My hands were trembling, holding the small lunchbox I had brought for him. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Only silence. And that silence felt heavier than any pain I'd ever known. When the ceremony ended, I watched from afar as Elisha posed with his friends. They were laughing, throwing their hats in the air. He never looked in my direction. I walked home slowly that evening. The road seemed longer than before. Every step felt like I was carrying the weight of years, not just of work, but of a mother's love no one saw. When I reached home, I sat on the edge of my bed. The same bed where I used to count coins in the dark, whispering, "This one is for his books. This one for his shoes. This one for his future." That night, for the first time in many years, I didn't count. I didn't pray. I just stared at the ceiling and asked myself one question. When did my love become his shame? The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I made tea, folded his graduation invitation, and placed it in the tin box. The same box that once held all my hope. I added a small note inside. Then I packed a small bag, just enough clothes to last a few days, and I left. Before I closed the door, I looked back at the house. It wasn't much, just walls, a roof, and memories. But it had held so much love, I whispered softly. Maybe it's time, my son. Time you learn what I couldn't teach you with words. Then I locked the door and walked away. When the sun rose that morning, Elisha woke up late with a hangover of pride. His phone was buzzing. Messages, photos from last night's graduation. "Big man now," one of his friends had texted. "Party soon, bro?" Another wrote. He smiled. He should have been happy. But somehow there was a strange quiet in the house. The kind that doesn't feel empty. It feels wrong. He called out, "Mom?" No answer. Usually by this time, she'd be humming in the kitchen, the smell of tea and fried bread filling the air. He checked her room, the bed neatly made, the window slightly open, curtains moving softly with the morning wind. Then he saw it. The small tin box sitting on the table next to his graduation cap. He frowned. The box was open, and inside there was a folded paper. He picked it up. "My son, I hope you smiled yesterday. I hope you felt proud. I have gone away for a while, back to the place where I came from, where silence still knows my name. You have everything here. Food, roof, comfort. Use it well, but remember this. Life without gratitude is emptier than an empty stomach. When you feel hungry, not for food but for peace, you will find me. Your mother, Margaret." Elisha stared at the note. He didn't understand. Gone where? Why would she leave now, right after his graduation? He shook his head and threw the paper on the table. "She's being dramatic," he muttered. She'll be back by evening. But evening came, and she didn't. At first it felt good. The house was quiet. No one nagging him to eat. No questions about where he was going. Freedom, he thought. The thing he always wanted. He ordered fast food, turned the music loud, scrolled through social media, liking pictures of his friends in shiny suits and new jobs. They looked happy. He felt he should be happy too. But late at night, when the lights were off, the silence started to echo. It wasn't peace anymore. It was something else. Something heavy. He looked at the chair where she used to sit. For the first time, he noticed how worn out it was. The cushion torn, the arms faded. And suddenly he remembered her sitting there, counting coins, whispering prayers. He closed his eyes, but the image wouldn't go away. Days passed. By the third day, the food in the fridge was almost gone. He didn't worry much. He'd just order again. But when he checked his phone, his bank balance showed only a few notes left. He hadn't realized how much she'd been managing. The bills, the groceries, everything. He never even asked where the money came from. Now there was no one left to ask. By the fifth day, he woke up hungry. The last packet of noodles was finished. He opened every cupboard, found nothing but salt, sugar, and an old tin of tea leaves. He called a friend, David. Hey, bro, I need a little help, he said, trying to sound casual. What kind of help? Just a bit of cash. I'll pay you back next week. David hesitated. Things are tight right now. Maybe next time, yeah? Elisha laughed awkwardly. Yeah, no worries. But when the call ended, the laughter died on his lips. He called another friend. Same response. A third one didn't even answer. He sat by the window staring outside. People walked by, busy, alive, complete. And he sat there, a grown man who didn't even know how to cook rice. He remembered his mother once saying, "One day, Elisha, when you eat food you cooked yourself, you'll taste what love really means." At that time, he had laughed. Now, the memory burned like shame. That night, he searched the cupboards again and found a small loaf of bread. Old, dry, probably forgotten. He ate it slowly, tears mixing with every bite. The next morning, he decided to clean the kitchen. Maybe to distract himself. Maybe because he wanted to feel like she was still there. As he washed the dishes, his hands trembled. He remembered how often she'd do this quietly, humming softly. He used to hate that humming. Now he would give anything to hear it again. He opened the tin box once more. There were a few papers inside. Receipts, small notes, and something folded in a plastic wrap. It was a savings slip from a cleaning agency, his mother's name on it, and a balance written at the bottom. He blinked. The amount was big, much more than he'd ever imagined she had. It was her life savings. She had been working double shifts, not for herself, but to pay his fees, his rent, his dreams. His throat tightened. All the years he mocked her, she was quietly sacrificing everything for him. He sank to the floor, holding the paper, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me, Mom? Why didn't you say—" For the first time, he realized how little he had ever seen her. He had looked at her face every day but never noticed the lines near her eyes, or the way her back bent when she walked, or how her hands were always cracked, hands that worked for him. He spent the next few days trying to call her number. It didn't connect. He even went to Ruth's house, their neighbor. "Please, Auntie Ruth," he said. "Do you know where my mom went?" Ruth looked at him for a long moment. "She told me she needed to rest," she said softly. "She said you would find her only when you stop running from yourself." Elisha lowered his head. "Do you know where she is?" Ruth sighed. "I do. But you don't deserve to know. Not yet." Those words hit harder than any slap. He left her house and walked aimlessly down the street. Everything looked the same, yet different. Maybe because he was different now. By the 7th day, his wallet was empty. He sold his watch, then his shoes. He tried to get a small part-time job, but no one wanted a graduate with no experience. The irony stung. He had a degree, but not a clue how to survive. That night, as he sat in darkness, no electricity, no food, the silence in the room began to sound like her voice. He imagined her saying, "My son, I didn't want to leave you hungry, but I wanted you to taste what hunger does to a soul." He wept. For hours. He cried until his eyes hurt, until his pride finally broke. At dawn, he packed a small bag. There was nothing left to take, just that folded note and the saving slip. He walked out of the house, barefoot, tears drying in the morning wind. The world looked new, harsher, but truer. He took the long road, the one leading to the countryside, where silence lives, where mothers who have given up on the noise of the city go to breathe again. The journey took hours. He stopped once to drink water from a roadside tap. Every sound, every bird, every breeze reminded him of her. He reached a small area with scattered homes, dust roads, and quiet air. He wasn't sure where to go, but something pulled him forward. Then, through the open fields, he saw a woman sitting on a wooden stool, washing clothes in a basin. Her back slightly bent, her hair tied in a scarf. Even from afar, he knew that shape. He called out, voice shaking, "Mom!" She turned slowly. Her eyes widened just a little. Surprise, sadness, love, all at once. But she didn't move. She kept her hands in the water, calm as the morning itself. He ran to her, fell to his knees beside her. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was blind. I was stupid. I didn't see what you did for me." She said nothing. She only took out the wet cloth from the basin, wrung it, and spread it on the line. Then she looked at him quietly. "You came hungry?" He nodded, choking on tears. "Then sit. Food will be ready soon." She went inside, and he followed, hesitant. The house was small, smaller than he remembered their city home, but warm. There were flowers near the window, the smell of wood smoke and boiled maize in the air. He saw her cooking, the same way she always did, calm, steady, peaceful. He sat on the small stool, eyes fixed on her. Finally, he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me, Mom? Why did you just leave like that?" She placed a bowl of porridge before him and said, "Because words couldn't teach you what silence could. You see, my son, sometimes a mother must disappear for her child to truly see her." He lowered his head, tears falling into the food. "I thought I was better than you. I thought my education made me higher. But I was nothing without you." Margaret sat opposite him, her hands folded. "You were never nothing, Elisha. You just forgot what something means. I didn't leave to punish you. I left so you could meet the version of yourself that understands pain." He nodded, sobbing quietly. "I met him, Mom. He's hungry and broken and ashamed." She smiled gently. "Then maybe now you're ready to start growing." They sat in silence, eating together. No fancy table, no shining plates, but it was the richest meal he'd ever tasted. Later that evening, as the sun went down, he walked outside, watching her hang the last of the clothes. He said softly, "Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness." She looked up at the orange sky and said, "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, my son. It's something a mother gives, because she loves you more than your mistakes." He stood there, unable to speak. For the first time, he felt peace. Not because life was easy, but because he finally understood what love costs. That night, as they sat near the small fire, she looked at him and said, "You will go back to the city soon, but not as the boy who left. You will work, you will struggle, and you will rise. Not for me, but for the man you must become. He nodded slowly. Yes, Mom. I'll work. I'll make you proud. And in the quiet night, under the whispering wind, Margaret smiled faintly and whispered, almost to herself, sometimes love must break your heart so that it can rebuild your soul. Do you know that moment when silence becomes heavier than words? When even the air feels like it's listening. That's how it felt the night before Elisha left the village. The fire was dying, the stars were awake, and the crickets played their endless song. He sat beside his mother, the glow of the flame painting her face in gold and shadow. He wanted to say something, but the words refused to come. Finally, she spoke first. Do you remember when you were little? She said softly. And you asked me why I never bought myself a new dress? Elisha smiled faintly. You said the old one was still good. She nodded. That was not the truth. He looked at her surprised. Then what was the truth? The truth was I couldn't afford it. I used to keep that money for your school lunches. Elisha's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. Every coin I saved, she continued. Every meal I skipped. I told myself it was worth it if you could have a better life. But the day you called me embarrassing, her voice cracked slightly. She turned her eyes away. That day I realized something. I had given you comfort, but not wisdom. He stared into the fire, the sparks flying upward like lost prayers. Mom, I didn't mean it. I know, she said gently. But sometimes words don't need to mean, they just need to hurt. And they did. Silence again. The kind that wraps around you, not cruelly, but tightly, like a reminder. When you disappeared, he said finally, I thought you were punishing me. No, she said. I was saving you, he frowned. Saving me? She looked at him now, directly, her eyes bright with something deeper than tears. You see, Elisha, love that always protects also blinds. You had never fallen, so you thought you could never break. And pride is a dangerous hunger. It eats what love builds. He nodded slowly, understanding now what pain had been teaching him all along. You left me to learn through emptiness. Yes, she said, because silence is a better teacher than anger. I wanted you to hear what I could never say. Through hunger, through loneliness, through yourself. He looked down, whispering, It worked. Margaret smiled faintly. You know, when you were born, the nurse put you in my arms and said, He looks like a dreamer. I didn't know then that dreams could grow thorns. She chuckled softly, the sound tender and tired at once. But even thorns protect roses. For a long while they just sat there, mother and son, fire and silence, memory and forgiveness. The night stretched around them like an old blanket. When morning came, the world felt washed clean. Elisha packed his small bag. Margaret folded a piece of paper and tucked it inside. What's this? He asked. A letter, she said. Read it only when you feel lost again. He nodded. As they stood by the doorway, he hugged her. For the first time in years, it wasn't the quick, distracted hug of a son who has somewhere else to be. It was long, quiet, trembling. She whispered against his shoulder. Don't waste your pain, Elisha. Use it. He left that morning, walking down the dusty road as the sun rose behind him. He didn't look back. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew she would always be there, even when unseen. Back in the city, life didn't welcome him with open arms. He found a small room, smaller than his ego used to be, and a job cleaning tables in a cafe. At first, it felt humiliating. He had a degree, he had dreams. But now he was the one scrubbing floors, just like she used to. One day, while mopping near the counter, he heard a voice. Hey, aren't you Elisha from college? He looked up. It was Mark, one of his classmates. Mark was wearing a suit holding a fancy coffee cup. Elisha forced a smile. Yeah, that's me. Mark blinked, confused. What are you doing here, man? Elisha hesitated, then simply said, Learning. Mark laughed awkwardly. You mean working? Elisha nodded. Working, yes, but mostly learning. Mark didn't understand. He shrugged and walked away. But Elisha did understand. For the first time, he wasn't ashamed of where he was. He was building something real, not a title, but a self. Days turned into months. He worked hard, saved a little, smiled more, and every night before sleeping, he whispered a prayer for the woman who had taught him without speaking. Then one day, he got promoted. The cafe manager said, You've got discipline, kid. You remind me of someone who's been through storms. Elisha smiled quietly. Maybe I have. He started writing in his free time, small notes, reflections, stories about life and gratitude. He called the collection Letters My Mother Never Wrote. People began reading them. One story went viral online about a mother who vanished after her son's graduation and returned as his greatest teacher. He didn't use her name, but those who knew her story recognized her heart in every line. Months later, Elisha finally went back to visit her. The road was familiar now, not just by sight, but by soul. When he reached the small house, the flowers were blooming brighter. She was sitting outside, sewing a piece of cloth. When she saw him, her eyes widened, then softened into that same knowing smile. So, she said, the city didn't swallow you? Not this time, he laughed. I think I swallowed my pride instead. They both laughed. It was the kind of laughter that heals something invisible. He sat beside her and handed her a small envelope. What's this? My first month's savings, he said. For you, she shook her head. No, my son. Use it for your dreams. This is my dream, Mom, he said, to give back a little of what you gave me. Her eyes shimmered. She took the envelope and pressed it against her chest. Then I'll keep it, not for the money, but for the meaning. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He told her about the stories he'd written, how people were touched by them. She listened quietly, the way she always had. When evening came, they sat by the window watching the sky turn red. Elisha asked softly, Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Why didn't you ever remarry? You could have had someone to share the burden. She smiled faintly, eyes still on the horizon. Because love, once given fully, doesn't divide. It transforms. And your father's love became you. That was enough. He felt tears rise, but she patted his hand. Don't cry for what's gone, Elisha. Cry only if you forget what remains. They sat there in silence, the last light of the day touching their faces like forgiveness itself. That night, after she slept, Elisha took out the folded letter she had once given him before he left. He opened it carefully. My dear Elisha, if you are reading this, it means you faced the wind and didn't run. I want you to remember, I was never ashamed of being poor. Poverty only means we must work harder to find beauty. What I feared was raising a child who couldn't see it. Life will test you, not with hunger, but with choice. The choice between pride and humility, comfort and compassion, success and kindness. Choose kindness, even when it costs you everything. That is where true richness begins. And one day, when you have your own child, don't protect him from pain. Teach him to walk through it with open eyes, with all my love, Mom. Elisha read the letter again and again, each word like a heartbeat echoing in his chest. He didn't cry this time. The tears were there, but they didn't fall. Because this time, they weren't sadness. They were peace. He looked at her sleeping on the small bed, her hand resting over her heart. He whispered, Thank you, Mom, for disappearing when I needed to see you." He stepped outside, under the same stars that once watched his shame. Now they looked different, warmer, closer. The night wasn't empty anymore. Years later, Elisha became a writer. Not famous, not rich, but true. People would come to his readings and ask, "How do you write with so much heart?" He would smile and say, "Because I learned from someone who spoke through silence." And every story he told carried her fingerprints. In the kindness between words, in the humility beneath pride, in the quiet strength of forgiveness. He never stopped visiting her, and every visit began the same way. She'd ask, "Are you eating well?" And he'd laugh, "Yes, Mom, and I even know how to cook rice now." They'd laugh together, the sound soft and full of memory. One evening years later, when the seasons had changed and her hair had turned the color of winter, she called him close. "Elisha," she whispered, "promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll keep telling the truth. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that heals." He held her hand, nodding. "I promise." She smiled, her eyes closing softly. "Then my work here is done." And in that quiet moment, with the evening breeze brushing the curtains, she slipped away, gently, peacefully, like someone returning to a home beyond time. Elisha sat there for hours, holding her hand, not crying. Not yet. Because love that deep doesn't end. It simply changes shape. When he finally stood up, he whispered, "Goodbye, Mom. Or maybe, see you in every sunrise." Years later, when people told him his stories healed them, he'd smile and say softly, "They're not mine, they're hers. I just borrowed her truth." And somewhere beyond the noise of this world, a mother's laughter still echoed, proud, eternal, and free.